Hello all far and wide, and welcome back to another episode of Outcome It's Not Black and White. My name is Matt Schiff and I'm your host for today and every day thereafter. Lucky you. Where my role is to bridge the gap between teasing out the mindsets, principles, tools and stories that high-performing individuals have used to shape their current reality and deliver that to you through your ears. I hope that you enjoy. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 2 of Outcome Podcast. I am currently standing behind a signboard on the Limassol Promenade trying to escape the wind and noise of the main road traffic to get this recording through to you. So if you hear any background noise, please excuse that. Today's episode is really exciting as I am joined by Glen Finkel, a once South African entrepreneur with a long personal journey in health, fitness, business and nutrition, as he jumps onto a recording with me that was recorded about 6 weeks ago. Not going to university at 19 and with a passion early on discovered in health and fitness, Glen and I spent time going through some of his experiences from jumping straight into life at work and quickly becoming the top sales rep after 3 months at the Sharper Image group of gyms, for those who remember or know the gym group. Despite his ability to help grow the business and his prospects of a promotion to a regional manager position just time after that, Glen handed in his letter of resignation to fulfill a lifelong dream of starting his own business, which we will discuss and you will see was pretty much the chain start of many successful businesses from that point on. Glen grew his offsite monitoring business in a new industry 10 years ago to over 1,000 employees before selling it to the second biggest security company in the world thereafter, a pivotal moment which we go through in our discussion. He and his wife, Yael, partnered with internationally recognized obesity specialist by the name of Dr. Eric Westman, who is currently an associate professor at medicine of Duke University and the founder of Duke Lifestyle Medicine Clinic, which started off his next adventure. For those of you who are out of Cape CrossFit, I'm sure you'll be familiar with the brand Adapt Your Life. And of course, we chat about his experiences and of Glen's why in wanting to reach as many people as possible. In fact, he and Dr. Eric had set a goal of 10 million people in 10 years, which is something we dig into as well. Our conversation obviously transitions around certain mindsets, challenges, and successes, which Glen is privy to expose and talk a bit more about. And I really hope that you enjoy. Thanks for tuning in. Good morning, Glen. How are you?
Good morning, Matt. Good to be here.
Glen, I wanted to thank you for coming onto the show today and a couple of talking points which would love to dig into, mostly around Adapt Your Life, obviously your business, which is your partner being Yael, business partner, as well as Mr. Eric Westman. We would like to dig into a little bit of that today and chatting more about your journey through health and fitness, mindset, being part of a family of 5, and really dig into a bit of those meaty topics. But before we get into anything too serious, I wanted to actually run past you. One thing that I did in a bit of preparation for this conversation was notice that you started working at the age of around 20 in about 1992, more or less. And according to your LinkedIn profile, you were a part of that business for about 10 years before you sort of pivoted into the next one, which was another 10-year stint. Perhaps a good starting point is to go back then as to what made you at the age of a young 19, 20-year-old go into a business with the mindset of, I'm in it for the long run. If you don't mind perhaps starting there.
Yeah, with pleasure. So first of all, thanks for having me on and good to be here and always good to see you. So yes, you are spot on. That is exactly how it happened. At the age of 18, I obviously left high school. I didn't get a university degree. And I've always been interested in the health and fitness kind of area my whole life. I've always trained ever since I was maybe 10, 12 years old. And from that age, it's always been a priority to me. So nothing changed at school. And at 18 years old, leaving school, I realized that I really wanted to get into the health and fitness kind of industry. So there was a gym group, a massive gym group in South Africa called Planet Fitness, and excuse me, not Planet Fitness, called the Sharper Image. And the Sharper Image group was the biggest gym group at the time. And I went out for an interview and got the job. This was at 18 years old. I worked there as a salesperson for around about 3-4 months, and very, very quickly became one of the top salespeople in the gym group. And they noticed this, and at the young age of around about 19, they made me a manager. I think they had about 23 gyms at the time, and it was run by 4 brothers who I became very friendly with. One of the main guys, a guy by the name of Mark Austin. I got very close to Mark, and I became a manager at the Sharp Image. And within a very short period of time, the club that I was at was the highest performing club of the group. So they decided, well, let's move me around to a different group, a gym that was battling, and see if I could do the same thing. And they did, that a further 3 times, and in all times I made those gyms the highest performing gyms of the time. So this was around at about 20 years old. They were about to make me promote me to a regional manager, which means I would have had about 6 to 8 gyms underneath me. I would have earned more money. And this was in 1991, 1992. I was only 19, 20 years old. And at that time, I was earning a ridiculous amount of money. I was earning more than people double my age were earning. And I was about to become a regional manager. And a very good friend of mine, who was also a manager at the same time as me, we'd been talking for about 4 or 5 months, and it had always been a dream of ours to open up our own company. What we were going to do, we didn't know, but every day we would dream about opening our own business and doing something for ourselves rather than for working for somebody. And so we formulated a plan, and we walked into Mark's office, who was one of the owners, like I said, and we handed in our resignation. This was just before I was going to be made a regional manager. Everyone thought we were mad. My parents thought we were crazy. David's parents thought we were mad. And we resigned. And I'll never forget Mark, who was the owner, was a good friend of mine. And he said, at the end of the day, he understands he will never, ever hold anybody back. Anyone that has a dream and that wants to pursue the dream, he will never hold them back. And he just shook our hand, and he wished us the very, very best. And so we went and we opened up this business. Of course, being 20 years old and opening up a business like a security business is a very, very tough thing. So little did we know, but it's very, very difficult to go to corporate clients and have them take you seriously when you're only 20 years old. So it was very, very difficult. And if I remember correctly, the first 2 years of that business, we never earned a salary. So from earning a ridiculous amount of money at 19, 20 years old to earning no money for the next 2 years. And I can tell you, we learned a lot of lessons in that period. And one of them was a lesson in patience and humility. So eventually we built that company up to over 1,000 staff members. Yes, that morphed into different ally type of businesses. So we went from the guarding business to the offsite monitoring business. And then that progressed and evolved to was our most successful business, and that was the offsite monitoring business. And we grew that from a brand new industry. It hadn't even really started in South Africa, and we became the biggest in South Africa within 10 years. And then we sold that business to the second biggest security company in the world, and that's when I decided to follow my passion, my next passion, which is go back to the health and fitness industry. And we partnered up with a extremely well-known, internationally acclaimed obesity specialist by the name of Dr. Eric Westman. And we're very lucky enough for him to accept us as business partners. And that was about 5 years ago. And that's what we've been doing ever since. And we really, really enjoy it.
I have so many questions.
lined up before we get into the last 5 years at least. The first thing just to consider is what were you feeling? Do you have any memory of the emotion you felt walking into your boss at that stage, handing in a letter of resignation after being one of the top performers after several months, couple of years, and then going off somewhat into the unknown to start a business? What do you remember any of the emotions or feelings you had at that stage?
I actually remember it like it was yesterday. So there's a few defining moments in my life, and that was one of them. Right. And so yes, it was a mixture of being excited, of being very, very nervous. The nervousness came from the fact that I'd been very, very friendly with Mark. I got very, very friendly with Mark and his brothers over the 2 years that I worked there. And I didn't want to let him down, but at the same time, I was very excited. And it was a huge relief when we gave him that resignation, and he kind of gave us his blessing, so to speak. And he said, listen, he can only commend us for trying to follow our own dreams.
Right. And little did you know, I think, or perhaps back then, that something like offsite monitoring, at least in today's day and age, is probably the leading security measure in that particular industry. And 10 years later, you again had pivoted to re-find a passion and moving back into health and fitness, which is something we'll come back to. I'm a little bit interested to, if you don't mind, unpacking a little bit more about the kind of maybe tips and tricks that you use to sell to corporate clients. I'm sure at the age of 20, you had a couple of wary eyes or a couple of question mark above your head, starting out a new business, and then seemingly convincing people to buy your service or get involved with the product. What was that like?
So it was very tough for a few reasons. So number one, I'd never been to the army. So my knowledge of security was absolutely ground zero. It was absolutely nothing. David had at least gone to the army, and I'll never ever forget. I think Richard Branson says, if you have an opportunity and you don't know, how to do the job, pretend that you do until such time as you do know how to do it. Or uses different words, obviously more eloquent words than that. But that's exactly what we did. I'll never forget. We ordered this is the first stint into our security industry. We obviously had to choose colors and choose uniforms, etc., etc. And we chose these uniforms. I'll never forget. The security guards came to my house. We had no clue on how to even put this uniform on them. We eventually figured it out. It was absolutely just comical. It was a joke. We went to go see a couple of commercial clients, and they said, well, where have you got guards? And we had to kind of flip a little bit and say, no, we've got guards here. And then they said, well, can I see them? And I'll never forget, we went to friends and we put our guards outside these houses in case people would go and have a look. At the end of the day, that's the kind of thing that we had to do in order to break into that industry. And our very, very first client that we ever got, I'll never forget. They asked for a day guard and a night guard, which included a dog, and it was at a residential complex. And we put the guard there. We dropped him off ourselves. We trained him up, and this was at 6 o'clock at night. And obviously, at 6 in the morning, he was going to be relieved by the next person. When we got there at 6 in the morning, him, our uniform, and the dog were gone.
Oh no!
And that was like, welcome to security. A couple of things I'll just never forget, and that was one of them. And I thought, oh my word, what have we done? And let me tell you, there were a lot more lessons after that.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
No, I'm sure that's quite a it's quite a funny story, and I guess a harsh lesson in a harsh introduction into the new work.
Very harsh. Yeah.
Is it something that the lessons perhaps that you learned from there, and we can sort of feed it into a conversation now, but are there any lessons that you had learned from there, or any particular perceived failures that you implement in today's life or today's?
Well, I think business is a series of failures. Anyone that tells you that business is easy or that it's quick, obviously either hasn't done it, or they're not telling you the truth, or they are the absolute minority. So it's only what is perceived. So you often see people that have succeeded in something, whether it's CrossFit or whether it's a sport or whether it's business, and it kind of looks easy. Like for example, me coming into a sport, let's say CrossFit, and looking at you, you make it look easy. But at the end of the day, it's taken years and hours of blood, sweat, and tears to get there. Same thing with business. So I think the lessons that you learn in business is, number one, it has to be hard and you have to fail. You have to fail to evolve. And you have to have grit and determination. So if you are one of those people that wants to build a business in a short period of time and have these huge expectations, I mean, yes, it might happen in the 0.1% of moments, but at the end of the day, businesses take years, businesses take failure, businesses take time, and they take massive amounts of grit and determination. And I can tell you now that in my 23 or 25 years now of being in business, I can tell you that is a common trait. Every time I go into a new business, I think it'll be a little easier. Well, it's not. It's all hard. It's just what the perception is out there of what it looks like on the outside.
Well, that's reassuring to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
And your comment about the CrossFit, I appreciate that.
No problem.
It's interesting to hear you say that, though, Glenn, because I mean, judging by, excuse me, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but your experience through work over the last sort of 25 years has been almost very entrepreneurial. It's starting out the security business. It's been with a new gym prior to that. It's now with Adapt Your Life, which again we'll talk about in a bit. As opposed to working for someone, is that something that you learned from your parents, that grit, determination, hard work, or had you had to learn it? Has it been bulletproofed over the years?
So we were not blessed with coming from a scholastically inclined family. So none of my parents, none of my siblings ever got university degrees. But what we did have is that determination and grit. So if I look at my parents, my father's always owned his own business. He's always worked hard, and he's always been that way inclined. And I can remember from, I think, about 15, 16 years old, it's always been a dream of mine to either work in my father's business or work in my own business. And actually, a funny story is before I went and worked for the gym, I wanted to work for my dad, and he wouldn't let me work for him, which at the time I thought was an absolutely shocking thing. How can your father say no, to you to working in his business? But if I look back now, it was the best lesson that I could have ever learned. So yes, I always knew from a very, very young age that I didn't want to choose the path of going and working in a corporate and climbing the ladder. I wanted to go out there and do it myself and either fail or succeed on my own. But at least I wanted to try and do that. And I'm lucky enough that I've been successful and semi-successful, and I have also failed in businesses as well along these 20, in fact, it's not 25 years now. I'm 48, so it's now 28 years. So in this 28 years, I've had businesses that have succeeded, some more than others, and I've had businesses that have failed. And, it's just the reality of being an entrepreneur and going after your dreams yourself.
Yeah. I'd like to zoom in on one particular thing there, and that is the failure aspect. Purely because I guess the experiences which I have had personally, and the conversations I've had over, I suppose, the many years and conversations that have happened, often the rhetoric is fail fast, learn quick, and then pivot, or fail many times. Shoe Dog, the book with Nike, it's about that premise as well. Fail fast and learn quickly. What is it that determination is something that I'm quite interested in, because failing quickly and not veering too far off into something new to try and start something new. Over 28 years, you've been involved with, I suppose, 3 businesses. So that is against against the status quo. Often we hear that at the age of 25, you'll go through 5 or 6 jobs by the time you hit the age of 48. And you say that you've failed a few businesses or a few, I suppose, aspects of business. Could you perhaps maybe highlight what those failures are?
Yeah. So the first failure was after about 5 years in the guarding industry. I was getting married at 26 years old, and we decided. Obviously, I had David, my business partner. We had one other partner in our business at the time, and I decided that I wanted to immigrate. So me and Yael at the time, we just got married. We arrived in America and we set up a business. And let me tell you, in 1 year, I don't think I made $1 in that business. I just lost money. So, and lucky enough for us, we came back after a year. So the determination and grit would have just meant that I would have lost absolutely everything. But luckily enough, I came back to South Africa, and we had never sold the business. So I walked straight back into the business where we left off. We carried on growing it. So that was the one failure. Later on, we after we had opened up our arm response division and been successful at that, we thought, well, this is easy. You know, we had the guarding company, we had the arm response company. It was pretty easy being successful, and we decided that we were going to open up a different, a kind of ally to our business, because in our industry, the service industry, they're renting security guards, they do offsite monitoring, they do arm response, but they also some of the companies would rent these plants, like these. You go to a corporate office that have, I don't know, 50 or 60 pot plants that they would rent, and you would manage these. So we thought it was kind of allied to our business, and we started that. And yes, that business failed as well. So yeah, there's been a couple along the way that I didn't mention that failed.
Okay, super interesting. To fast forward a little bit, you married at the age of 26, and to a large extent, our conversation has obviously involved yourself and Leo have been business partners as well. This is something that I'm particularly interested in, especially for those that are looking to travel with a loved one or a spouse of sorts and potentially start a business. I'm sure, without putting words in your mouth, that having someone who you're involved with in a relationship, as well as being a business partner, has its own set of challenges, and it has its own set of rewards as well. Is there anything that comes to mind that you can share around some of the challenges or some of the blessings that you've had having your partner as your business partner as well?
So yeah, that's a very good question. So I think it can either work for you or against you, for sure. So why having Yale? So first of all, Yale was not a business partner in any of our previous businesses. Yale only became a business partner in Adapt Your Life.
Okay.
And the reason why that was strategic and very helpful in this particular case is because Yale, like me, has a passion for nutrition and health and wellness. And in this case, Yale had most of the expertise. In fact, I was the one that had to kind of latch on to some of her knowledge, and she had to educate me on a lot of the things that we now have learned along the way. So in this case, it was really a strategic move. The challenges that people would face is that, when you go off to work and then you come back at 5 o'clock, whenever you do, you don't share the stresses of a business with your partner. So you have that very definite business life, and then you have that very definite family life. And so the challenge is, when you are working with a family member or your wife, the challenge is that line is often not separated. So your family life and your work life is one and the same. And I think that many people are able to make that work for them, and some people are not. And so I think there isn't a hard and fast rule. Will it work? Won't it work? I think it's an individual thing. And I think that if you are going to attempt doing that, you've got to have a solid relationship. You've got to understand the ground rules from the beginning.
Yeah, no doubt. It's quite funny how, I guess, in the situations that you've explained so far, you're the one having to fast track and having to learn quite quickly from those around you. Which is pretty cool, and that you're able to then adapt it and apply it within your conversation, your life, and business thereof. Being a dad of 5 is something that or a dad of 4, if I'm not mistaken.
So I've got four girls, four teenage girls, and then so six of us all together.
6 of you all together. I'm sure it's no easy task either, just having so many people around all the time. What is it that perhaps you as the Finkels do to unwind? How do you maybe not take a break from one another, but what is your source of switching off, if you do have something of that nature?
So again, for us, and ever since I can remember, for me and Yale, it's always been, ever since I met her and ever since I can ever remember, as I said, from like 12 years old, it's always been about sport and being healthy and active. And so that has translated now to at least 3 of our kids. My 4th one is going to hopefully start getting into it now. She's away at the moment. Hopefully she gets back and gets more into it. But in terms of the 5 of us that are right now together, we spend almost every single day doing CrossFit together. So the kids, the 3 kids go and train twice a day. And Yael and I are very involved in our own training as well as their training as well. So what do they say? A family that trains together stays together, right?
I think that's how it goes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Coming off the back end of Women's Day, I think it needs no introduction to the kind of influence that I'm sure the ladies in your life have had, but also interestingly within our own fitness industry, CrossFit, and seeing the way, especially your daughters, have just latched onto the sport, and their motivation to keep going. And you can see, I think, your youngest ranked 2nd in South Africa in the last CrossFit Open, which was phenomenal within her first year and a half of training. And the others are not too far behind, which is something quite exciting to see and be a witness of. Is there anything in particular, Glenn, in your life, if I sort of isolate you, that you have learned from the ladies in your life? So sort of feeding onto that string of Women's Day, is there something that you have either adapted or you had to grow or learn from those that are dearest to you?
Yeah, so I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, having the girls in my life, the four of my kids and my wife, I can tell you right now, without a shadow of a doubt, I am absolutely confident and certain that women are better than men at most things. There is no question that in my mind at all. Seeing how the determination and what women what these women can actually do is absolutely mind-blowing. And in most cases, I think they do a better job than us men.
Fair. I'll agree with you on that one, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's what it's taught me. That's what it's taught me over the last couple of years.
Slight pivot, Glenn. We're moving in the last 5 years to the business Adapt Your Life. And as briefly mentioned, you had partnered up with Eric Westman, who is a leading obesity expert in a keto-based diet. Could you please explain a little bit more for those that perhaps don't know about Adapt Your Life? What is it that you guys do? Or what is the goal? And yeah, take it from there.
Yeah, so first of all, Eric Westman has been doing this for the last 20 years. He treats very, very ill patients, people with type 2 diabetes, people with metabolic syndrome, people with hypertension, all metabolic type of issues, and he treats that specifically with diets. He is the director of the Duke Medical Lifestyle Center at Duke University. He is one of the only doctors in the world to have ever received private funding from the late Dr. Robert Atkins. He's written over 100 peer-reviewed journals. He's a graduate of Stanford University, University of Kentucky, and I think I'm not sure of the third one. He is internationally acclaimed, and what is great about him, he wrote a book called The New Atkins for a New Year, for which that book became a New York Times super bestseller. So what do? There are 2 aspects to our business. Number one aspect is that we create low-carb, keto type of nutrition. But instead of calling it keto, low-carb, I think the emphasis is on the fact that all of our products are made with no added sugar, and all of our products have either 1 gram or less of sugar per product. And I think that's a massive, massive direction that we're going in the fact that if you look at the last 50 years, the amount of sugar that the average person consumes is absolutely mind-blowing. So, if we really had time to break it down, it would literally blow your mind. I'll just give you one very, very interesting thing to leave you with, or whoever watches this or listens to this. The fact that in our bloodstream, in the human body's bloodstream, we only have around about a teaspoon of blood flowing through all of our veins at any given time. 1 teaspoon of blood. When you eat a banana, that's 28 grams of carbs. Your body immediately has to produce, your pancreas has to produce insulin to handle that sugar load. If you don't, you're going to a sugar coma. So when people eat these ridiculously high foods in sugar, cereals, fruit juice, sodas, it does damage to our bodies on a progressive and prolonged scale. So it's not something that you have the high sugar drink now and then all of a sudden you feel sick tomorrow. No, it's a progressive disease, and the amounts of type 2 diabetes has reached absolutely exponential epidemics, which is just absolutely crazy. So from the one side, we create and we try and highlight the fact that sugar is definitely the root of all evil, and it is definitely something that every person in this planet should be looking to lower in their diet, whether they're on a keto, low carb or not. Everyone should be looking to lower the amount of sugar that they have in their diet. And the second thing that we do is we have educational events. We do about 9-10 educational events in the United States where we go to different cities. I travel to the United States and we travel with Dr. Westman with a couple of other people from the ADAPT team, and we go to different cities and we partner up with local doctors in those communities. We then teach a method of being able to heal a lot of these conditions through nutrition. And then when we leave town, we've obviously left a support structure in place. So the doctors that are all equipped to be able to handle the new load of patients. So at the end of the day, we go to town, we educate, we leave, and we leave a support structure in place. So we do this, and that's the two aspects of our business. We have a YouTube channel. We've got nearly 40,000 people that follow us, and we then put out all this information for free onto our platforms, onto the YouTube channel, under the name of Adapt Your Life. So I think it's part education and part, trying to impart that knowledge that you don't have to treat some of these conditions with medications. A lot of these conditions can be treated amazingly well, in fact, much better than medication, through nutrition. But a lot of people don't know that.
Phenomenal. That's quite a scary stats that you mentioned. I had no idea about a teaspoon of blood within our body.
Teaspoon of sugar in our blood at any given time.
That's
around about between 6 and 7 grams of sugar. And do you know that the difference between a healthy person and a type 2 diabetic is only 10%? So if you have only 10% more sugar running through your veins, 10% more than 1 teaspoon, that makes you a type 2 diabetic.
Wow. Well, noted. I'll be sure to put a few of those notes down, a few of the statistics down within the show notes as well, so people can just read that in as well as listening to take that in. In our last conversations, you had mentioned that Adapt Your Life, the duo that you are, or the trio rather, have quite an audacious quote-unquote goal to affect the lives of 10 million people within the next 10 years. You mentioned 40,000 people have subscribed to your YouTube channel. So you're exploring avenues via online as well as the 9 to 10 events that you do within the US. How has that been, trying to get the ball rolling and influence more people? I'm sure it has its own set of challenges, but is there anything that comes to mind in terms of how you plan to achieve such a goal? And do you intend to take these events international or global at some stage?
So, very good question. At the end of the day, if you are passionate about something that you do, that is half the battle won. Because if you are going to try and get involved in a business where you really don't believe in it and you aren't passionate about it and your intentions aren't genuinely good, then unfortunately, I think it's a limiting factor. In the case of our business, we are genuinely we genuinely have a passion for this business. We genuinely want to get the information out there. So we are lucky enough to be living in an era where social media is impacted all of our lives, and it is that specifically which will enable us to reach over 10 million people. And in fact, I believe we're going to do that well before 10 years. So yes, we've got 40,000 people that watch that follow us on YouTube, and 35,000 odd on Facebook, and however many on Instagram. But the fact is, a lot of our videos get over 150,000 views. So if you have to take the views of our videos alone, that we've got over 200 videos in that Adapt channel. you'll probably find that we've already probably hit over 2-3 million people already. So it's not that I'm going to have 10 million people subscribe to my YouTube channel, although that would be amazing. The fact is, if we are able to have videos being watched and share some education and touch somebody in some small way, and help them in their life in some small way, I believe that is an incredible goal that we will achieve.
I couldn't agree more. And the fact that you have support systems thereafter, especially within the areas that you present the workshops or the events in, I suppose really drives home that sustainability, that this is possible. And these are the success stories of people who have done it. And having that kind of support is really, really important. Adapt Your Life has been instrumental in the last 5 years within you and your Yale's in your life. And having a business abroad from South Africa, within the US, different time zones, different culture, different people, all in general. How have you managed to get that balance right within your personal day-to-day life, managing things like your own health and fitness, spending time with family, and then also running a business abroad? How has that been in the last 5 years?
So obviously that means I've traveled to the United States at least 3 times every year, which is, I don't particularly like traveling, but at the end of the day, show me a business that everything is just wonderful and marvelous, doesn't exist. So that's the thing that I don't enjoy, the actual travel part. But when I get to the United States, I absolutely love the work that we do there. So it's just meeting all these people, having all these events, touching people's lives. The culture is, of course, it is completely different. But I feel that over the past 5 years and going there 3 times a year, I almost feel like I'm more in touch with working in America than I am working in South Africa. So that has been a learning curve for me that's been very, very enjoyable. I think that the world is completely becoming more globalized and decentralized. So I think that if you had to say to me, if this business was around 20 years ago, it would be impossible. But the fact that the whole world is becoming decentralized, a lot of businesses, are decentralized now as well. So people are able to work from wherever they are. This is not something that was around 15, 20 years ago. So, I think that again, the huge increase in the digital world has enabled companies like ours to exist across borders and be able to obviously do whatever we need to do without actually having to be there.
Right, and 100% rightfully so. I suppose it's what made this conversation possible as well, right?
Exactly, right.
Glen, the Adapt Your Life goal is to reach 10 million people, to influence and affect those that are involved with the product, hands-on, and to those that are being exposed to it by whatever digital platform it might be. You come across someone who's been very passionate and have always had health and fitness as a part of your DNA, growing up from such a young age. Have you been able to, or if you could, excuse the vagueness of this question, but if you could fit in a singular why, a phrase or a sentence as to why do you do what you do, or why is it that, yes, influence in helping people, but how is it that from selling your business to the second largest security business within the world into something like health and fitness? I'm interested in trying to understand what made you transition at the age of 30 or 40 or so into now following a passion of yours.
Well, I suppose it's a progression. When you're very, very young, you have to do things that you don't enjoy, like go to school, like study. So these are things a lot of people don't really enjoy it. Then you go get your first job, and you can't be very picky and choosy in your first job. In my case, I was pretty lucky. But typically speaking, you have to do things that you don't enjoy. Then you start a business, and you start a business with the sole intention of trying to be successful and trying to make money. And so what happens is, and if you're lucky enough to get this right, you keep on doing things that you may not enjoy entirely until such time as you have been successful. And in my particular case, we were successful, and only after 20 odd years of being able to sell for a meaningful amount of money, which would then allow me to follow my dream, right? So The reality is if I was not able to sell to that company, and I wasn't able to get that healthy amount of money, I would then be dependent on chasing, having to survive. And that is the biggest thing that most people face on a day-to-day basis. The challenge that they cannot see the wood for the trees, and they have to continue with their current lifestyle until such time as, there's an opportunity. In my case, it was a progression. It was doing things that I didn't like, less and less and less, all the way up to selling, and then eventually gave me the opportunity to do something that I really, really wanted to do. Now, if you ask me, what is my aim? Is my aim to be rich because I want to buy material things, or is it my aim to grow the company to a certain size? This is a personal thing. My personal why is to be able to have financial independence. That is me. Of course, I'm very proud and very honored to be part of a business where we affect people's lives in a positive way. And that is very important for me. But at the same time, I want to live a life where I am financially free. It has nothing to do with material things. I don't have any aspiration to drive any fancy cars or do anything else like that. I really enjoy the time that I spend with my family. I enjoy my time. I enjoy the way I work. I enjoy all these things. And so being financially free will then allow you to do the things that you really want to do, the passion that you really have to follow. It allows you these things. If you take the financial freedom away from a person, they unfortunately have to do things that they may not want to do. So my why is to be financially free, to be able to chase the things that I really am passionate about, that I really want to do. If that makes any sense.
That makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. And I think it's exceptionally powerful. The psychological pressure that I suppose financial constraints not only have on us as individuals, but on families, on opportunities to chase, on dreams, so if you will. And I understand, I think it could be quite limiting. But it's exceptionally powerful to hear you say that, through doing the things that you don't necessarily want to be doing, with that very crystal clear goal in mind, I suppose it gives you enough leverage to weather the storm until eventually it falls into place. Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's
100%.
Yeah, super interesting then. I have a couple of rapid questions which I normally like to ask, and albeit slightly sporadic, if you bear with me with them. But one that comes to mind, and I think it feeds into quite nicely on the remarks you just made, is: have you built any particular habits or routines that have helped you in achieving your goal, either sort of financial independence or that of adapt your life's goal, affecting people? Are there any particular habits or routines that you use daily, weekly, monthly?
So yes, and of course these are obviously personal to me. It doesn't mean that if somebody had to follow in my footsteps that it would work for them. This is just simply what's worked for me. I personally am not a big fan of working hard. I'm a big fan of working smart. So a lot of what I do is well thought out. I tend not to work until 10 o'clock at night. So that is quite a big thing that I follow myself. The other thing is that I'm an absolute creature of habit. And one thing that has kept me going all these years is the fact that I train every single day. And I think that in the very, very odd occasion where I'm either sick or I cannot train, it really does affect me in a negative way. So having routine in your life enables you to do the same thing over and over again and perfect whatever you're doing. I'm not talking about the fitness now. I'm saying having routines, being able to work in a particular way, being able to be consistent. So consistency, working smart, being healthy, a healthy mind, healthy body. Those are the things that have worked for me.
I've got two particular questions around that. One around training, the other one around your routine, somewhat. Not to be picky about it, but I'm quite interested in here. What is it that it actually do? Is it a pen and paper the night before writing down a to-do list? Do you have a Google Doc in the morning saying these are the things I need to accomplish within the day, business, life, training? Or do you have any of those tools that you go back to and rely on?
So weirdly enough, every single great idea that has ever come out of anything that I've done, that if I look back and I think I've been successful at, talking about business-wise, most of those ideas, or in fact, I probably think all of those ideas, come with me either sitting on a bicycle, doing training, or running in the mountain on my own and just clearing. That's where my thoughts are at their absolute clearest and best. When I'm on my own, training, out there in nature, those visions and ideas come through super, super clear for me. And then, of course, yes, they get noted down. Everything goes onto my phone. Absolutely every single idea goes onto my phone, gets expanded upon, gets worked upon, etc., etc. So, yeah, very, very unorthodox, I suppose. It's not this board meeting that's a collaborative effort with 10 people that gets me to a lot of these ideas. It's sitting out there on a bicycle in the middle of nowhere in the mountain, or running in the mountain on my own, that these little gems of ideas come to me.
Which leads itself into my next question, funny enough. Is there a particular favorite type of exercise which you like to do?
Well, yeah, at the moment it's CrossFit. So before CrossFit, we were very, very competitive, both Glen and I, cyclists. We probably compete in about 24, 25 races every year. We would do very, very well. We were part of a team. We were in the license category. So that involves around about 15, 16 hours of training every single week. And that chapter ended when we went and moved to Cape Town. And we've started on the CrossFit journey. And that's now evolved to training 6 days a week doing CrossFit. And we absolutely love it. So who knows what the next thing is. Hopefully there won't be another thing. Hopefully it'll just be CrossFit. We really enjoy it.
And hopefully we'll see you competing at some stage on a very high level in some sort of competition outside of the online open. We can see you joining your girls on the leaderboard.
Yeah, well, anyway, first of all, I'm actually joining Ashton in Battle of the Beast at the end of the month.
Oh, fantastic.
So, yeah, she's 15 and she's the one who came second, by the way. And yeah, to be able to join her, doing the RX, by the way, doing the RX version, with she's only 15, is going to be such a privilege for me. So I'm very, very excited about that.
That's brilliant. Look out for that. I'll include that into the notes as well for those that are listening. Of Battle of the Beast, Redham Constantia in Cape Town. What is your team name?
I think it's called the WOD Squad. It's called the WOD Squad.
The WOD Squad. Okay, well, keep a look out for the WOD Squad in the RX division. It could be quite entertaining to watch, I'm sure.
That's it.
Glen, last two questions for me that I just want to run past you. The first one is, do you have any particular favorite books, quotes, poems, songs that you refer to in times of doubt? And if so, why that particular insert object or insert quote?
So first of all, the answer is yes and no. So here's a weird fact about me. I am not a big book reader at all. I literally do have ADD, and I cannot sit down and read a book for more than 10 minutes. I just simply cannot. So what have I done in the past? I've had other people read the books, like Yale, and she gives me the shortened version. And we sit and discuss it, and we talk about it, and I get everything that the book has to offer, except I get it from her as opposed to me sitting down and reading a book. So that's I suppose that's not something I'm very proud of, but at the end of the day, I just cannot read books, unfortunately. But I can tell you that there is a book that has a profound effect, that has had a profound effect on me. So there's one book in particular, and this is only a book if you are starting a business, or if you have a business and you want your business to be as successful as it possibly can. And that is a book called Brand Story. And that is just so if you have a business and you are wanting to clarify your message, this book is an absolute gem. It's absolutely amazing. And actually, this is one of the few books that I've actually read and gone through in depth with our team to implement it into our business.
That's brilliant. I'll include that as well. Last question from my end on this side is, Are there any particular favorite successes that you have had? Not necessarily people that you have followed, but any memories or moments in your life that you draw inspiration from in those times of darkness or overwhelming?
You talk about business or in sport?
I suppose either one. And if it draws from sports into business or from business into your dark times in CrossFit, is there anything that sort of comes to mind?
I think instead of answering that way, I can tell you that there were defining moments. So the defining moments, there were a couple. I mean, I think in a person's lifetime, there might only be between 5 and 10 defining moments that you might have. You know, come to a crossroads and you decide you're going to go left or right. And those defining moments are, like I said, they're few and far between. So I've had a couple of them. The one is leaving a job that was obviously I was very good at and very successful at, and to going to the unknown. That was a pivotal point in my life. Deciding to go to America and come back was another pivotal point in my life. Deciding to start our offsite monitoring company was a pivotal point in our life and a massive direction change, a pivotal change. And then selling it and going in this direction is another one. So what's that, 4 or 5? And I'm 48 now. So hopefully I'll still have another 5 of those to go.
Just about to say, by your stats, it almost seems like you hit your quota.
Yeah, exactly.
I hope not.
So I think the lesson there is that you cannot change direction every 2 minutes. You really, really need to stay the course. You need to have grit. Businesses do not take a year to get off the ground or to be successful. Typically they take 5 years. If you look at those stats about how many businesses fail, there's much more businesses that fail that succeed in the first 5 years. So if you're able to weather the storm, to not change direction every 2 minutes, and have a consistent methodology and solid plan behind what you want to do, and have passion about what you want to do, I think you've got a good chance. Those are the good seeds of success, in my opinion.
Fantastic. Well, Glen, thank you. I really, really appreciate your insights and sharing of your lessons, your stories, some of those failures and successes. I think it's been exceptionally rewarding. I've got a whole page worth of notes here that I'll be sure to pop up on afterwards, so people can have a read through as well. The last thing I always do enjoy asking towards the end of a conversation is if there anything that you in particular might need from the audience listening, whether it be for Adapt Your Life, whether it be through your own personal journey. Is there anything that you need right now or would appreciate from wearing ears that perhaps are listening that you would take on?
I think if I were to look at the most important one, it would have to be the fact that everybody, this is not a personal thing, this is just what I believe that the whole world should be doing, should lower the amount of sugar that they have. I know that that's not a profound statement or anything else like that, but I can tell you right now that it is mind-boggling the amount of diseases, chronic diseases, and people that are really going to suffer later on in life because of the ridiculous amounts of sugar that we eat on a daily basis. So if I could give any message to any of your listeners, and this applies to everybody, there's no one that is exempt. You don't have to be on a keto diet. You don't have to be on a low-carb diet. But what you should be doing is lowering the sugar that you have on a daily basis. Make a concerted effort to lower that sugar. And a little exercise that someone could do. So most people wouldn't know that carbs is sugar. So when you're eating a banana, 28 grams of carbs, that's 28. That is 5 times the load of sugar that you currently have in your blood that you're eating just a banana. And my advice to you would be to calculate everything that you eat. So let's say you write down everything that you eat in a typical day, then go to Google and find out how much sugar is in all of those foods that you just consumed. I think that most people would fall over. They would be absolutely blown away at how much sugar they actually consume. So one message, reduce the sugar.
Perfect. I know that people can visit your website on www.adaptyourlife.com. You're obviously all over social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, under the same handle. YouTube, as you mentioned, 40,000 followers. So if you you find yourself procrastinating, or if you're looking to find out a bit more information about Adapt Your Life or sugar content, lowering sugar content, there are tons and tons of videos all up online. So have a look at that. As Glenn mentioned, there's lots of free content. And of course, the hashtags Adapt Your Life, Adapt and Thrive, More Love, or More Love, Less Sugar. All three hashtags that you can follow to stay in the loop with how things are going. Glenn, I want to thank you again for your time. And I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
100%. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thanks. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.
Hey guys, Matt here again. Just before you run off, thank you for lending me your ears and tuning in once again. I hope that you enjoyed the conversation. And of course, I would love to hear any sort of feedback you might have. You can do so through all forms of social media, really. I've probably spammed enough about that. Or through my email, which is outcomepodcast@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. I am an open book and am willing to learn. If you haven't yet subscribed or shared the podcast via the very many links that you could potentially find it on, I encourage you to do so too. Looking forward to hearing from you, and until then, cheers.